Yeah, Mr. Chairman. As I said, I'm a little disappointed that Dennis is not here because I want him to hear my views. So I suppose because he had made this statement on constitutional reform, we all would want that. I would start by saying that that it appears from what Dennis has said that the CRF is very different from, not very different from the Ryan Committee on Constitution Reform. He said they undertake the same task, except that one is government funded and the other is private funded. They both go around the country soliciting the views of the population on this matter of constitutional reform. And therefore what I would have liked the Ryan Committee to do, I also would like the CRF to do, and which is to sift opinions. Constitution reform, I remember I told Dennis that constitution reform the proposals for constitutional reform is like noses. They are like noses. Everybody have one, and you have millions of proposals for constitutional reform. And therefore, what the committee needs to do, or any committee on constitutional reform ought to do, is to sift these opinions so that you can see what it is people really meant or mean to say when they say what they say. Because people are trying to solve particular problems they see in the Constitution. Certain shortcomings in the Constitution, and they recommend X, Y, or Z. And therefore you need some agency that sifts that, right, and bring it to the country. Say, these are what people are saying, but so and so. When you wait, this is what it points to. So that you could have some strategic intervention. We cannot intervene really on this matter of constitution reform. And if you're to avoid a confusion. So that's one thing. I thought the CRF had another duty which it was well placed to execute, and that is to provide information to the country on this matter of constitutional reform, to disseminate the history of constitutional reform as it pertains to the English-speaking Caribbean and so on. Now, that's an ancient history, long history spanning the 500 years, and that might be a very tall order for them. Although coming from the university, you wouldn't think so. There's also the most recent history, which involves the standoff between President Robinson and Prime Minister Pandey, which then is cited as the reason for the coming into existence of the CRF. And I have a document here from him called Proposals for People's Manifesto on Constitutional Reform, in which he says that there's a root factor, he calls it, a constitutional root factor that explains this particular standoff. And he said this factor needed to be clearly articulated. So in the 7 years, you would expect that he would articulate that. And he hasn't done that. I have gone to quite a number of CRF meetings in the hope that they would deal with this standoff between the president and the prime minister. I raised the issue, and nobody took it on and so on. And I tried to prepare something for this meeting on it. And it dawned on me how much the country is scared of dealing with this thing that these issues raise. It's one of the issues the public doesn't want to raise. I mean, why is it now, after all this time, that you don't have some document that you could refer to about how this crisis had proceeded? I would welcome a chronicle of the events, of the standoff as they took place. There were 4 or 5 of them. And I will welcome some kind of summing up of the opinions that was generated as a result of this standoff. I think it's extremely important for us to, if we ought to go anywhere in constitution reform.